I'd now like to call to order the January 8th, 2020 formal City Council meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman DeCiccio. Councilmember Garcia. Councilman Nowakowski. Here. Councilwoman Pastor.
Here.
Councilwoman Stark. Here. Councilman Waring. Here. Councilwoman Williams. Here. Vice Mayor Guardado. Mayor Gallego.
Here. Thank you. We have an interpreter here today. Mario, will you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My name is Mario Barajas. I'm going to be today's Spanish interpreter, and I'm going to be making a brief announcement in Spanish. Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Mario Barajas. Voy a estar sirviendo como el intérprete de español esta tarde. Si acaso necesitaran el servicio de intérprete de español, podrán acudir a los servicios de intérprete a través del personal, cualquier miembro del personal en la parte de atrás del cuarto. Así le podrán proveer los aparatos para poder recibir la interpretación en español. Gracias. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Will the city clerk please read the 24-hour paragraph?
The titles of the following ordinance and resolution numbers on the agenda were available to the public at least 24 hours prior to this council meeting and therefore may be read by title or agenda item only. Ordinances number G6653 through 6662, S46263 through 46308, and resolutions 21801 through 21804.
Thank you. Councilman Williams, do you have a motion on mayor and city council board and commission nominations as revised? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We have a very prestigious group of citizens who are going to serve the people of Phoenix here today to be sworn in.
And if you'll please just gather right here. You'll be sworn in as a group.
So there'll be one portion where you say your name and then a later portion where you say the board and commission on which you will be serving. Thank you all so much for your service. Please raise your right hand. I state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the office of according to the best of my ability. So help me God. So help me God. Thank you for your service. Oops, I'm sorry. Today's appointees include members of our commission fighting human trafficking, and we'll be back on January 28th with an update from that commission. So thank you all to all of our boards and commission members for your important service. Vice Mayor, do we have a motion on liquor licenses?
Yes, we have a motion to approve items 32
32 through 115, except the following. Motions to approve items 2 through 31.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Next, we move to ordinances, resolutions, new business, and planning and zoning. City Clerk, are we ready for the next?
Yes, Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
So we have a motion to approve items 32 through 115, except the following items 33, 36, 43, 45, 50, 62, 79, and 107 through 112. Item 70 is continued to January 29th, 2020, and item 103 is continued to March 14, 2020. And excluding these items for public comment 74, 77, and 87.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments? Roll call.
Oh, Mayor, just want to make, Mayor?
Councilman DeCiccio.
Oh, I'll be really quick. Now, it excludes 107, correct?
It does.
Okay, thank you.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia. Nowakowski.
Yes.
Pastor. Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes unanimously. Item 33. Vice Mayor.
So I would like to make a motion to approve item 33 to American Association of Airport Executives for membership dues.
Motion and a second. Any comments? Roll call.
DeCiccio.
No.
Garcia.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. 7-2. Passes 7-2. Item 36.
I would like to make a motion to approve item 36, settlement of claim Zapeda versus City of Phoenix.
Any comments? Councilmember Garcia.
I just wanted to see if staff could give us the facts of this or what it involves.
Mayor, members of the council, Councilman Garcia, this is payment of a claim to the daughter of an individual who sued the city after an interaction with a police officer in a restroom at a Quick Trip. There was some misunderstanding of the circumstances. The city has already paid the claim to the individual. This is a claim filed by the minor daughter who was there.
Any additional comments? Roll call.
DeCiccio.
No.
Garcia.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Pastor.
Yes.
Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes 7-2. Item 43.
I would like to make a motion to approve item 43 to Maricopa County Rio Salado Community College for Police Academy testing services.
We have a motion.
Second.
Councilwoman Pastor.
I have a potential conflict, so I am not voting on this item.
Noting that Councilwoman Pastor will not be participating, roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Yes. Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes 8-0. Item 45.
I would like to make a motion to approve item 45 to
Second.
Nugent Strategies and Solutions for Solid Waste Cost of Service Study for Public Works.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments? Roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Pastor. Stark? Waring? Williams?
Yes.
Guardado?
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes 8-1. We next moved to item 50. Will the city clerk please read the title?
Ordinance 50 is for Ordinance G6661, an ordinance repealing Phoenix City Code, Chapter 10, Article 15, relating to the licensing of structured sober living homes.
Thank you. We have one comment card on this item from Leonard Clark.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. My name is Leonard Clark. I remember in the past all of the controversy. I think this is a good thing. I think that compromise needed to be made. I can understand neighborhoods not just wanting to find out at the last second or being concerned about issues from these homes, but at the same time, this is something that is a benefit to society. Many of us have loved ones or good friends that need help for addictions that they might have. So I think that this is a good compromise, and I thank you, and I hope you'll vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you. We do not have a motion yet.
So I would like to make a motion on item to amend city code state legislative structure sober living homes.
Motion and a second. We'll do Councilman Waring and then Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to note that I appreciate the state stepping up to make the rules for sober living homes of a statewide nature. I think that's the right thing to do. It is a statewide problem, and I appreciate them doing that, and that's why today we're doing what we're doing, is because the state took on the role of managing the sober living homes. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So she sort of, Councilwoman Stark just kind of touched on what I was going to say, but maybe for Chris or Deanna, just very clearly, this is us complying with now statewide rules, so there aren't different rules in each city, just so the audience understands. That's basically what this is.
Mayor, Councilman Waring, yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Roll call.
DeCiccio?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Nowakowski?
Yes.
Pastor? Stark? Waring? Williams?
Yes.
Guardado?
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes unanimously. Item 62.
Second one in 2020.
So I would like to make a motion on item 62, citywide professional development facilitation and training services.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments? Roll call.
DeCiccio?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Nowakowski?
Yes.
Pastor?
Yes.
Stark? Waring? Williams?
Yes.
Guardado?
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes 8-1. Item 74. Item related to opioid.
Okay.
We do have one card from Leonard Clark.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Although I'm not always residing in Phoenix, I was born right down the street, so at Good Samaritan Hospital. But I just want to hope that you will pass this, you will vote for this. This is an epidemic that is killing a lot of people. Either if you don't know somebody, you might have a family member. A lot of these things are shipped in, so I think that's great. I don't know the exact details with access, but rather than just throwing people in jail who have addictions or are afflicted by what some religious people would consider are demons, maybe we can get treatment and stop, helping the prison system grow and maybe, do something about addictions, because it's not just true. Sometimes it's a psychological, it's a physiological, genetic problem. Sorry if that disappoints some of my conservative friends, but we need to do something besides just throwing people in jail for addiction problems. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any comments or
Mayor?
questions?
Oh.
Councilman DeCiccio.
Mayor? Thank you for that, Mayor. And I think Leonard Clark actually brings up a really good point, is that I would say probably close to 97 to 99% of the opioids that are being brought into this country illegally are coming from other nations, primarily from the South. But at the same time, it's coming into this country, and it really brings up a bigger debate of whether or not this whole war on drugs thing, I know it doesn't deal with us that much, but it really does, is whether or not this whole thing that we're doing in this country is actually working, because it doesn't seem to be working very well. We have more opioid deaths now than we've ever had. We have more addictions than we've ever had, and I just don't know if this whole thing is really working. And it's a frustration level on my end, and it is something I think that we should be thinking about, whether it's now or later, but whether or not these monies would be better spent dealing with these individuals that are addicted than allowing these cartels to basically profit and kill innocent people in this country. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Roll call. I'm sorry, we need a motion.
So I'll make a motion to approve item 74.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes unanimously. We next move to item 77, the generous donation from Bricon to help the police department's canine kennel get some upgrades at the Southern Command Station. Very generous, great partnership. Leonard Clark has filled out a card.
Sorry, I know I am speaking a lot, but I have good family members. I do live out on El Mirage off and on, as well as Phoenix, Prescott, and some different places. But I heard the sad news about in El Mirage of the police canine being killed. And then I just read of the conditions that are in the police, one of the Phoenix police kennels, and I couldn't believe it. It's the way they described it is really bad. So I want to thank this corporation, this company, for coming in and doing something, because our canines, they are sent in first, and many times they're shot. So I really hope, I hope all of you will vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, do we have a motion?
Yes, I have a motion to approve item 77, I'm sorry.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any council member comments? Roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes unanimously. We next move to item 79.
So I would like to make a motion to approve item 79.
Second.
Item 79, Aviation Department Photography Services. This is making sure that we are doing a good job communicating with the public. We have a bunch of very exciting events coming up. It's going to be a big season for tourism. Earlier today, the City Council unanimously supported bidding for the Women's Final Four. That will be a great boon to our community. We've shown that we produce wonderful sporting events. We've never had the Women's Final Four, and we have a lot to celebrate going forward, so it'll be nice to make sure that the airport is able to participate in great communications as we move forward. Photography has gotten a, or maybe the Women's Final Four, round of applause. Do any council member comments? Roll call.
DeCiccio.
No.
Garcia.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes 7-2. Item 87.
I'd like to make a motion to approve item 87.
Second.
Item 87 relates to water production wells and aquifer storage and recovery wells. Leonard Clark.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I hope you'll vote for this. One of the reasons I like this, I'll check into the details. Maybe your staff can help me later. Is the recovery, the part about recovery wells, because I've heard of other large cities. I've heard that Tucson might have wells so that when it rains, that the water, that all that water that gets evaporated that might go back up immediately can be stored. So I'm wondering if that's what part of this is, or if it's just a direct storage of water, you know, from another river or the agreements we've made, but I hope that that's what it is. If not, I would ask that you please start considering drilling wells, but not wells, but tunnels into the ground so that when it rains, all of this water can go back in, because we are in some big trouble. Look at Australia. Right now, everything looks rosy, but I'm telling you, you all know about the water shortages. We've had them up in North Phoenix, or concerns of them. It is coming, and we need to prepare now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any council member comments? Roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes unanimously. Item 107, related to short-term rentals. Will the city clerk please read the title?
Item 107 is for Ordinance G6653, an ordinance relating to short-term vacation rental by amending the Phoenix City Code, Chapter 10, by adding new Article 16, imposing a penalty for violations and including severability.
Thank you. I believe we are going to begin with a brief staff report. Take another item out of order? We, Vice Mayor, would there be a motion to take items 108, 109, 110, and 111 out of order?
Yes, I'll make a motion to put items 108, 109, 110, and 111 out of order.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We will next move to items 108 and 109, which are related cases for the northeast corner of 45th Avenue and Alameda Road in District 1. These items are in Council District 1. Councilwoman, would you like to hear a staff report, or shall we go straight to the public hearing?
A very brief report, if you have one, Josh.
Mayor, members of the council, item 108 is a request to hold a public hearing on a general plan amendment for the following, a general plan amendment at the northeast corner of 45th Avenue in Alameda. The request is to go from 0 to 2 dwelling units per acre to 2 to 3.5. Staff is recommending approval. Here's an aerial of the site, the existing general plan land use designation, and then the proposed. The request was approved by both the Deer Valley Village Planning Committee and the Phoenix Planning Commission. The corresponding zoning case, I'll jump right into that. Request to go from S1 to R110, same acreage. This was also approved by the Deer Valley Village Planning Committee and the Planning Commission. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will open the public hearing. Do we have any cards or citizen comments? We do not. I will close the public hearing. Councilwoman.
Yes, this is actually good planning for the city. I would move approval per the Planning Commission on both of these and adopt the related ordinance. You've got me.
Mayor, Councilwoman Williams, for the general plan amendment, it would be to move per the Planning Commission and adopt the related resolution. And for the zoning case, it would be to move per the Planning Commission and adopt the related ordinance. And so the general plan.
So close, one word off, right?
So
okay, I want to amend my motion to say per the.
So it might be good for a motion for the general plan amendment would be per the Planning Commission and adopt the related resolution, and then a subsequent motion to per the Planning Commission and adopt the related ordinance.
Okay, so I need both of those?
Yeah, one is one motion for the general plan amendment and the other for the rezoning case.
For the general plan, I move per the Planning Commission's recommendation and adopt the resolution.
Yes.
You have a second?
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Yes. Pastor. Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Okay.
Passes unanimously.
For the zoning, I move we approve the Planning Commission's recommendation and adopt the related ordinance.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Noakowski. Pastor. Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes unanimously. Item 110 and 111 are also related cases related to the southwest corner of 35th Avenue and Hackamore Drive. So we will hold a joint public hearing on both of them. These items are also in District 1.
Yes, they are.
Shall we commence with a brief staff report?
Please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Josh Bednarik has been doing a great job, so he's going to continue on going.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, members of council, same format as last one. This is the general plan amendment request. This one's going from parks open space 0 to 2 dwelling units per acre to residential 15 plus, on approximately 13 acres near 35th Avenue and Hackamore Drive. This is a aerial of the site. You'll see it's just south of Sandra Day O'Connor High School and just north of an existing shopping center off of 35th Avenue. Here's the current general plan land use designation, a mix of single-family, commercial, and just a touch of the park's open space. The proposal is to go to multifamily. Staff is recommending approval. The Deer Valley Village Planning Committee recommended approval along with the Planning Commission. The corresponding rezoning case is for R4 PCD to allow multifamily development. Again, same site, same location. Here's a little bit more zoomed in. The layout of the site in question. Here's some of the other elevations proposed. Staff's recommending approval subject to a list of stipulations. The request was also recommended for approval by the Deer Valley Village Planning Committee and the Planning Commission. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does the applicant want to speak? Does the applicant want to come forth and do a quick presentation?
Open the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Happy New Year. My name is Carolyn Oberholzer. I'm with the law firm of Bergen, Frake, Smalley and Oberholzer, 4343 East Camelback. Very happy to be here before you on behalf of the Peterson Group for their companion applications, the general plan and zoning. As Josh just mentioned, I do have a very brief presentation to load if the clicker is available. Yep. Thank you. So while that's loading, Jim Peterson bought Stetson Village over 12 years ago, developed it, and that's at the corner of 39th and Happy Valley. This is that aerial that Josh showed. I'll skip past that. This shows you Stetson Village today. It is a Safeway anchored center. It's 100% occupied Class A office building. And so when the adjacent property at 35th and Happy Valley was scheduled for auction by the State Land Department, it was very important for Jim Peterson to control that land to make sure that the quality of development that occurred there would be to the same level of what he has invested and succeeded with at the Stetson Village Shopping Center that you see here. And to give you some perspective, we did outline Stetson Village 2 with an arrow at that right hand of that top slide so you can have some perspective there. They are, it is the only adjacent property, as mentioned by staff. It is the high school across the street, the old landfill across 35th. And Peterson Group approached the auction with the concept of a mixed-use village, keeping commercial along that frontage, putting residential behind it to bring density and an integrated and very intentional residential development as a component of the commercial to support those tenants and the area. And the reason I wanted to give you a very brief presentation is one of the topics that we've covered a lot in the public hearings has been the idea that this is a single family area, multifamily doesn't belong here. And I wanted to touch on that in this zoning history, which was established in 1988, this covered 2,400 acres of state trust land. This is the last privately held undeveloped piece in that whole project to move forward in development. Everything else is developed. But when it was originally established, 40% of this project included multifamily units, and you see the blue and the red on this screen identify areas that were zoned for multifamily. They're adjacent to the white areas, which are single family, except for those commercial areas that I just popped on the screen now, and we're talking about that bottom right-hand corner. Over the succeeding decades, and we just entered another one, the project has almost completely developed out, and all of that acreage that was blue or red or allowed multifamily has gone single family. And so even though 40% of this project was originally envisioned to have some multifamily components, that just did not happen. Also, with the original staff stipulation of 4,000 unit cap, if I may wrap up now? Is that okay? Yes. Do I have time? Okay. The 4,000 unit cap was established. We're well under that today. All told, there are 3,316 units there. The 325 that are proposed as a part of this project would take that total just to 3,641, leaving plenty of room in between that and the maximum unit cap of 4,000, which we will likely never see reached. So they're landing on the site plan. I'm happy to answer any questions about it. All of the activity is centered through the frontage commercial development. It's exit only onto Hackamore where the school is behind. There will be a common drive in between this project and the adjacent commercial driveway. And I'm happy to answer any questions and would like to be able to address the council again after the public comment, if I may.
We will go to the cards. Thea, I think, Schwartz. Did I really mess your name up? A-T-E-T-H. Oh, Arthur, I'll bet it is. Sorry.
Good. I'm just going to read through this real quick because I know time is of value here. My name is Arthur Schwartz. I've lived in Phoenix since 1980, in the Happy Valley area since 2014. My two sons graduated from Sandra Day O'Connor, and my grandson attends Desert Sage, so I'm pretty vested in the community. I have a supporter of growth and development. When I got here in 80, there were 800,000 people residing in the metro Phoenix area, and now there's about 4 million. I think this is great. There's wonderful things have happened here in the valley. This development, when it was announced, tremendous outpouring of objections were lobbied by the Happy Valley community. Over 200 attended the public hearing, the first public hearing concerning it, and the Peterson group was floored to be met with such fervent opposition. I know this because October 16th, I met with Jim Peterson to recommend what I thought might be a solution to the development. I suggested that they consider building an upscale assisted living facility and model it after Mirabella project in Tempe. Additionally, his commercial properties on the south side of the property could cater to medical tenants as well as services which supported the growth segment. Going down this path would eliminate two of the most common objections, traffic and the less desirable transient tenants. He at that time said that he liked the idea and had some merit, but he had contractual obligations with his partners and would be more apt to consider it if this did not get approval from the city. The village plan, which was created several decades ago, indicated there should be growth and multi-family developments. But things have changed. That area, as Carolyn had just pointed out, is now mainly single-family residential. And just because it was recommended in 1988 does not necessarily mean that that's the best thing for it. Sandra Day O'Connor didn't exist at the time. The traffic that's created such a boondoggle didn't exist at the time. And now by adding another 500 residents to this 13-acre site, this is going to create a perfect storm. I've given the council statistics that span the last 4 months of this past year. New, inexperienced drivers rushing to get to school on time have caused or been involved in 5 of the 11 accidents on that report. This occurred between the 35th Avenue and the 39th Drive along the Happy Valley corridor. 2 of them resulted in injuries. And those statistics do not include the multitude of the fender benders that weren't reported with the police.
We need you to wrap up soon. We need you to wrap up.
Okay. I don't think that the Peterson Group really appreciates the problems that are going to happen. Had approved in the commercial segment is a QT, Quick Trip, tremendous volume, it's a great operation, but putting that in that location with the kind of traffic that we already have is just a perfect storm. And it's, in my opinion, it's just a matter of time before one of those accidents turns into fatalities. And that's something we don't want to see. Children going to work, secretaries going to work, moms, dads, all that kind of stuff are going to go through there. It's in your hands at this point. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Robert Seg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. I've got a statement that I'd like to read, try to stay within the time limit, of course. My wife and I have followed this process since it was begun in mid-July. We are the grandparents of a child, our grandchild, who is a junior at Sandra Day O'Connor High School. Over the course of the vetting process for this proposal, at both the Planning Committee level and at the Plan Commission level, we stated our objections as follows. We're very concerned about the negative impacts on Sandra Day O'Connor High School from this project. As was noted, the proposal is immediately to the south of Sandra Day O'Connor. Number two, traffic, safety, security. These are all concerns that have been mentioned at the Planning Committee and the Plan Commission level concerning the development as it is built out. Number three, the size, the design, the appearance of the proposed multifamily structure. It's in sharp contrast with the region's overwhelming single-family residential development. That too was touched on by the attorneys for the developer. Number four, the project's excessive density and its likely strain on infrastructure. It was mentioned that 325 units are proposed for this 13-acre site. Not mentioned was 557 vehicles that would be expected to be parked on this particular site. And number five, the way in which the proposal seems to contradict the important goals and the principles in Phoenix's general plan and the Deer Valley Village character plan. I can't go into detail here, but that is something that has stood out to me throughout this entire process. In short, this is the last stop for this proposal, presumably. We hope that it gets your full consideration and your full, hopefully, reconsideration. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Ms. Oberholzer, is there any last comment? No?
You know, Mayor and council members, just again, thank you. We hope that you can support the case as Peterson Group has put together an application that is balancing creating a commercial environment with a residential environment, and you know, there's definitely traffic involved with every case, but the whole property is C2 now, and actually by including this back half as R4, there will be a reduction in the amount of traffic if it were to develop as C2. So we've had that dialogue through the hearings, and thankfully we are arriving here with a recommendation from the village and commission, and hope that we've given you what you need to agree with those bodies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I happen to know this area very well. I was on the council when Stetson Hills was approved. And it was very, very controversial at the time because there were a few horse farms out there, and they didn't want anybody close to the mountain or any of that land developed. Now we're down to almost the last pieces. And it is one of the most beautiful areas in my district. It has exceptionally good people living there. The problem we have had most recently is the traffic from the high school. And we have been discussing with the Deer Valley School Board about the parkland that is adjacent to the school and right behind this site of either leasing it to them or selling it to them for additional parking. Because the parking problem has been going on, at least I know, the last 10 years. And unless the school board steps up and does something about the parking, it will always be a problem. I happen to know the projects, or not maybe all of them, but most of them, that Pedersen Group has built, and they are always quality projects. They are an asset to the neighborhood and the community. And this area is right along I-17. It's one of the few places in the whole north area that actually has bus service. And we also have a housing shortage. We have very little affordable housing out there, but these are going to be nice apartments. And in the last 2 years, we have had so many new employers that 22,000 new jobs have been created up there. And I am going to approve this, move this forward for the Planning Commission and the village. I think it is a worthy project, and I think you'll be surprised. I think the new high-end restaurants coming in, you will be delighted. Happy Valley has become a regional road. It goes from Peoria all the way through to I-17. It is heavily trafficked, and I know I'm always on the streets department to improve the landscaping and the pavement, so it gets all of our attention, and I think this will be an addition that will be very positive in the future. So therefore, I move. Would you have to close the hearing?
Close the public hearing.
Okay, now I'll make the motion to approve this per the Planning Commission's recommendations and adopt the related ordinance.
So,
all right.
Should we vote first on 110 and then 111?
Again, Mayor, members of the council, for 110, it would be moved per the Planning Commission and adopt the related resolution as the general plan amendment.
Okay.
And then on 111, it would Planning Commission and ordinance.
Okay. I will restate that. I approve this item for the Planning Commission and adopt the related resolution.
We have a motion and a second on item 110. Roll call.
DeCiccio?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Nowakowski? Yes. Pastor?
Yes.
Stark? Waring? Williams?
Yes.
Guardado?
Yes.
Gallego?
Yes. Passes unanimously.
Okay, for 111, I make the motion to approve this item based on the December 5th, 2019 Planning Commission approval and adopt the Planning Communities District Major Amendment.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
DeCiccio?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Nowakowski? Yes. Pastor?
Yes.
Stark? Waring? Williams?
Yes.
Guardado?
Yes.
Gallego?
Yes. Passes unanimously. Congratulations. I think this project will bring some exciting amenities that the community has been looking for. We now take up item 107, short-term rental registration. Will the city clerk please read the title?
Item 107 is for Ordinance G6653, an ordinance relating to short-term vacation rental by amending the Phoenix City Code, Chapter 10, by adding a new Article 16, imposing a penalty for violations and including severability.
Thank you. A lot of individuals, including our councilwomen, have been working very, very hard on this, and I think this is a process that will continue. Technology is changing, state legislation seems to be changing, so we'll continue working on this item. We'll begin with a staff report from our planning director, Ellen Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Item 107, as was stated by yourself and the city clerk, is our short-term rental ordinance. It is addressing the rental registration requirements that the state passed last legislative session to allow for cities to create a registry so that short-term rentals have someone who can be a designated contact if there are neighborhood concerns or issues with the police trying to get in contact with someone if there are issues at a short-term rental. For some background purposes, real quick, back in 2017, the state law was changed to eliminate local control on short-term rentals in residential zoning districts. The ordinance, as most ordinances throughout the state, prohibited stays of less than 30 days within a single-family or multi-family neighborhood. If you were staying less than 30 days, you had to be in a commercial zoning district a la hotel. However, that statute, which was put in place to allow for the sharing economy and so short-term rentals to develop, does require that the city treat them in the same manner as we do other residential uses. And so that's what comes forward today. It's been the law since 2017. We are proposing 2 city code amendments. One is the short-term rental registry we're talking about today. The other one is the strength and allowed party ordinance. That won't be on the council agenda until February so we'll talk about that issue at that point. In terms of the existing short-term rental ordinance that is before you, this does add definitions for online lodging marketplace, short-term rental, vacation rental, non-residential use, and verified violations. There was a memo that was handed out to you all just a few minutes ago, as well as some of the folks who are concerned on this particular issue. There are more copies of the memo that are in the back of chambers that outlines proposed changes that we will talk about as part of this presentation. The registration requires a property owner to have a designated contact with a name, address, and contact information for someone to be a responsible party should the police need to get a hold of someone to address issues, or so that neighborhood services department out of a part of zoning enforcement could go forward and try and address concerns that neighbors have. And so the proposal that is coming before you here has some changes from the initial draft. And so the first change is the third bullet point here on the screen, and that requires that the proof of registration, once an online operator, which is the person who is responsible for operating the house or the rental, they have to register with the city, and they have to then have that registration that the city will give them back a copy with their registration number, and they post that within 10 feet of the entrance inside the rental. An earlier version had that on the outside. The ordinance also addresses that it is a violation to rent a short-term rental unit for a list of prohibited uses. Those prohibited uses are taken directly out of state law. They are for things operating like a banquet hall, other commercial activities, a restaurant, retail businesses, housing sex offenders, a sober living home, selling liquor, other adult-oriented businesses. All those, as well as any other non-residential use, are prohibited. And so the proposed ordinance makes it clear that within the inside of the property, it has to be posted that you cannot rent it and do those uses for someone. And also, as part of the online registration, to rent out your unit, the revised draft requires an online lodging operator to put forward as part of their application. They would show and have language when they're describing, it's a 2-bedroom rental unit, here's the conditions of it and describing it. They would be required to put in a statement that this property cannot be used for purposes identified in the city of Phoenix regarding prohibited uses, as well as list the short-term registration number for this property, list that as part of their advertising. And that will just help with compliance and ensuring that if we are getting complaints and concerns from residents, that it has registered and complied with the city requirements. The other change that is changes going forward here's all the list of uses that we just went through and talked about. And then the original draft had language from that the City Council Subcommittee changed to say within 60 minutes of being called by police or zoning enforcement, a person had to physically be on the vacation rental premises to address any issues. The latest draft has that being only the police being able to require that time compliance, and also it can be addressed by either the phone or via text message, and that is because we are trying to accommodate in a large city, people being able to respond, and it really, the timing component is really critical when you have the police and there's an incident late at night and they need someone to secure the property. Then that's really more of a police issue that we need that quicker turnaround, where zoning enforcement could still go through its traditional methods, to do that. The online marketplace, we're also clarifying as part of this that the online lodging marketplace is not responsible for any violation. So an online lodging marketplace is the terminology that applies to Airbnb, VRBOs, Orbitz, HomeAway, and those types of platforms that allow people to advertise their homes. They are in this ordinance, they're not liable for what someone says as part of the advertising that shows up on their website. The city would go after an individual operator for whatever they put in their advertising, and the remedy would be to address them. And it does require the list of the registration number, as I noted before. Violation of the ordinance, there are first offense, second offense, and third offense. The city would pursue other legal enforcement methods. For example, if there was a short-term rental that had, underage drinking that was happening there, that the police went to that, they would also be pursuing whatever, citations and criminal, aspects would be present as part of a situation. It wouldn't just be limited to a short-term rental issue. And then the fines would apply to the rental owner, the agent, or the renter of the particular unit. Staff does request approval of that per this memo. I do want to highlight a couple of other changes on here, one of which is to strike the provisions that require a use permit if you are renting a vacation rental unit that doesn't meet the definition of a family that exists today in the zoning ordinance. Staff is proposing to take this item out now so that we can come back and work on that in the future to find a better way to address this issue. Currently, that definition exists. It's been there for the 19 years I've been with the city, but we are wanting to figure out a better way to ensure enforcement of that particular issue and work with the platforms and others on that particular element of it. And then lastly, we are proposing a change that would allow for an entity that owns multiple short-term rental units to enter into an agreement and have a written agreement with a group who provides does the online lodging, but the operator is the one responsible for complying with this ordinance and liable for all the provisions. So for example, if you have an apartment complex that rents out the majority of the year for 1 year, 6-month leases, those types of leases, that property owner could have a written agreement with someone who is renting 5 of those units via a yearly process, but that entity is doing short-term rental out of those 5 units with the written authorization of that property owner, and they would provide a written agreement to the city saying, here's our agreement that gives control of those 5 units to this entity. They're responsible for compliance with your ordinance, and any violations or issues would go to them as the operator, not to the property owner. There have been a number of changes that have happened on this particular item all the way up until the last few minutes here, and so I'm happy to answer any questions. We have had very substantive and good discussions with industry representatives from VRBO, Airbnb, Orbitz, HomeAway, the Arizona Multi-Housing Association, and the major platforms are supportive of the proposed changes that we have put forward as part of this memo. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councilman
Mayor, can I ask one question? Oh, sorry.
Councilman Stark chairs the subcommittee and has been really working hard on this issue. Councilwoman.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a couple questions. So until this year, we didn't really have any authority over the short-term rental, correct? until the state took some
Mayor,
action.
Councilman Stark, that is correct.
And so what we are doing today is following the suggestions or the requirements of the state law, correct?
Mayor, Councilman Stark, that is correct.
And this is very similar to what the city of Scottsdale and the city of Tempe have adopted, correct?
Mayor, Councilwoman Stark, that is correct for the city of Scottsdale. It's similar to Tempe's. I'm not sure they've adopted theirs just yet, but it's in process.
They're working on it. I think we're all kind of doing the same thing because we're trying to comply with the state law. I appreciate what you said about the use permit, and I know we've had a lot of neighbors out. I see them in the audience that have been working on this, and they've been very patient. But I think they also understand that right now there is an ad hoc group at the state looking at some additional ability to give us some more regulation or some more rules, correct?
Mayor, Councilman Stark, that is correct.
So, and we are a part of that, and I know a lot of the neighbors that are here are a part of that, and I appreciate it. So I know you've worked very long and hard, and I know the industry has looked at our ordinance. I think it sounds like they're happy now, but they understand that we will come back if we get additional authority and revisit it, and I hope that we will all work together. I know we have some speakers here, but I think this is a good sign of the industry working with the neighborhoods, and I really do, again, appreciate. I see a couple neighbors out there that look tired just from the party houses. Anne Marie, I'm talking about you. I know you live next to a party house, and it's been really hard on you, but I appreciate that you're supportive of what we're doing. So again, we are trying to comply with what the legislature has given us, correct?
Mayor, Councilman Stark, that is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman DeCiccio.
Just a quick question to Alan, and because we talked about it prior to. The use permit section is being pulled? Is that correct?
Mayor, Councilman DeCiccio, that is correct. The memo that is, staff's working on emailing that to you now, but it does strike the provisions that require the use permit.
That's the only question I had, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. We will begin with Larissa Balderrama, and she will have up to 4 minutes. Kate Bauer has donated time to her. And she will be followed by Carrick Sears.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. My name is Larissa Balderrama. I'm a member of Take Action Phoenix. We're a neighborhood group of leaders dedicated to working with the state and local governments on issues that impact our neighborhoods. I'm also a Block Watch co-captain. We have multiple vacation rentals in our very small 3-street Block Watch. Some owner-occupied, some are non-owner-occupied. So I've seen firsthand the issues that short-term rentals can create for some neighbors. So Take Action Phoenix was in support of the ordinance as drafted, although we just found out that a very important piece, as Councilwoman Stark mentioned, is being removed. So while we are in support of the majority of it, I do want to reiterate that we believe enforcement is critical, that it's consistently enforced across all residential uses if it's to be fair. So the state law allows for this enforcement, and the neighborhoods feel it's critical that if there is enforceability, it should be equal, to be fair. But as you know, as Councilwoman Stark did mention, the state is contemplating additional legislation. We are actively involved with that, which is good. And so we are, we do think it's important what the city of Phoenix decides, sends a clear message at the state level to what's going on, to what the citizens of Phoenix and the state of Arizona want. So we are anxious for what happens with the state. Hopefully we'll be able to do some things that will help mitigate the issues that can be presented to neighborhoods with some of the short-term rentals. Thank you.
And Mayor, I've got your cell number, Larissa, so we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Carrick Sears will be followed by Bonnie Rashke.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. I'm Carrick Sears, and I rent out my primary residence occasionally during the year. I am fine with everything proposed except the 1 hour required response time to be available to talk about the property. If I am on an airplane and I was to be contacted, I would not even know of this issue until after the deadline, let alone time to have someone come to the property or be able to speak to it on the phone. This favors large property management companies who can always have someone on call and have staff with whom they can go down the list with until they find someone who can actually go to the property. It would not give the mom and pop owners who self-manage an opportunity to respond in such a quick window of time. In reality, if there is a noise complaint, they could be spoken with by the owner over the phone. All of my neighbors have my cell phone number. Or if the police do need to be called, law enforcement would tell the guests to cease the noise, and if it continues, they would need to be removed from the property, which would take law enforcement anyways. It's not just short-term rental houses. Motels and hotels also use law enforcement to remove unruly guests. We too are charging a 12% occupancy tax to our guests, just like motels and hotels, thus paying into the system for law enforcement support. So I ask of you that we do away with the proposed 1 hour response time, and that we also have the ability to list several emergency contact phone numbers for the registration. Thank you.
Councilwoman Pastor.
Alan? In the revised short-term rental, my understanding if where it's been revised, it says vacation rental premise or available on phone or text within 60 minutes after receiving a request.
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, that is correct.
Okay. And then the second piece that I have, the question that I have, is there the availability to have, if the owner or the person that is responsible for that rental, if they're not available, is there ability to put a second name or third name on the registry?
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, they could do that as part of the registry. We could provide, a blank for them to provide an alternate contact, should they choose to do that. The entire purpose of the registry that the state put in place and that we are seeking to comply with is making sure that someone is a responsible party, that we can get a hold of them when we need them. So that would be perfectly fine to have an alternate, designated, or even a third one if they want to designate someone to contact.
So the way I look at it, the registry is kind of very much, I'm going to relate it to my kids, but very much related to the emergency information form, where if there's an emergency, there's several names that I have listed that if they can't get a hold of me, they go to the second or third or fourth. So we have the capability of the registry that we are coming in compliance with state law in order to be able to, if there's a violation or something happening, someone can be reached.
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, that is correct, and we'd be happy to, as the registry is created in the online portal, be able to make sure that there are alternate blanks if they wish to select and to designate those.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie will be followed by, Bonnie is next, and she will be followed by Lynn Gerardo.
Thank you, everyone. I do support this ordinance and each part of it. I've come to you from two different perspectives, as one being someone that now lives next to a party house that has completely destroyed my sense of peace and well-being where I live. I mean, throughout the month of December, we had parties 3 nights a week, every week. We had weddings, we've had everything. It's been horrible. I'm also a tourism researcher, and I have studied tourism and the economic sustainability of this industry for the past 10 years. And I can tell you that from a global perspective, these regulations are necessary for the health of our tourism industry. You can look at places like Barcelona, where there are protests among neighborhoods against these things, and this creates a very unwelcoming atmosphere for visitors that is very detrimental to their industry. You can look at Boston, where they didn't regulate until recently, and 50% of their homes were going to short-term rentals, creating a massive housing crisis. You can look at LA, where property value has dropped due to, again, this disruptive nature that some of these rentals, such as party houses, can create. So I believe that supporting this ordinance will be very important in finding a balance, allowing people to do the short-term rentals and get that money and support our tourism industry while also protecting our neighborhoods and our communities, because we are the heart of the economy of Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn is next, and she will be followed by Helen Grimwood.
Mayor Gallego and fellow council members, Vice Mayor, thank you for this wonderful opportunity to speak to you today about the short-term vacation rental amendment or ordinance that's proposed. I was happy to hear that staff has made some consolation or some modifications to the original proposal. I did want to mention a few things. I think that I'm relatively unbiased and uniquely well-informed. I think I recognize the values of all the stakeholders. I commend the council for proactively seeking to implement procedures and restrictions. I really do strongly agree that we need an ordinance to ensure the peaceful enjoyment of our neighborhoods. I was happy to hear the staff talk about their collaboration with the platforms, but maybe not necessarily with owners and agents yet. That was a concern to me. I'm a licensed Arizona realtor, and I worked collaboratively with the Coconino County Board of Supervisors to implement policies for short-term vacation rentals in the Flagstaff community and area. I do own a short-term vacation rental there, and I'm pleased to say that I've been able to very successfully work with the community there, and I have 138 five-star reviews, as well as the support of my neighbors. So we are contributing to the economy positively in some environments. Oh, I'm out of time. So I just wanted to really encourage the staff and city council to take a little bit extra time, perhaps postponing this briefly, to consider further collaborating with some successful property owners and neighborhoods to see what exactly precisely we have done to protect our neighborhoods, and just a little bit of concern about the licensure, a little bit about just thinking about how we might alienate realtors who would be held accountable and be fined if they're representing an owner. So in short, I would just like to say that I think we just need a little more time to be successful with this ordinance, and there are many people, I'm sure, who could represent other values of other stakeholders, and like myself, I'm sure there are many people who could represent the interests of vacation rental owners who are not necessarily employed by VRBO, but also represent the interests of the rental agency. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jeff Spellman and Newton Grimwald and Ann Ender have asked to donate their time. Do you need that much time?
I hope not.
Okay. We'll try 6 minutes, and you will be followed by Barbara Freeman.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Council members, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to address you in connection with in your efforts to deal with what has become the plague of short-term rentals on our residential communities. My name is Helen Perry Grimwood. I'm a Phoenix, Arizona native, born in Good Sam, born and raised in north central Phoenix, live a half a mile from the house that I was raised in at 695 West Rose Lane, which is in Councilman DeSicchio's area. I was an undergraduate in Tucson, went to law school at ASU in Tempe, and basically retired now except for serving as a foster parent to two orphaned refugees and working on a foundation to help the refugee population here in Arizona. My husband moved here in '58 at age 11. He's lived here ever since. He went to Orangewood Grade School and West High. I went to Central High. Except for a few years he spent in college outside the state and then a stint with the U.S. Army in Vietnam. Our 2 sons, our 4 grandchildren, and our 2 foster sons all live in Phoenix. So do my 3 brothers, my sister, and most of their kids. We care deeply about the city of Phoenix and the preservation of our single-family residential neighborhoods and our associated property rights. One of the things that's been notable as I've been following the debate in all of this is discussion of property rights and how it always leaves out the property rights of all of the rest of the people in the neighborhood. Until last year, 610 West Berridge Lane was a large 3-bedroom residential single-family home with a large yard, a pool, golf practice tees, and a barbecue area. If you're familiar with our area of town where those double lots back, it used to be horse privilege property that fed into the Murphy Bridle Trail. So they're big lots with single-family houses on them. Recently, a new owner-investor who lives in Alaska and has never lived here converted 610 West Berridge into a 9-bedroom, 7-bath resort that sleeps 32. On almost an acre of property, it's still being advertised that way. Initially, Platinum Express, which manages it, advertised it as an event forum. They've kind of toned it down recently, but obviously there's only one thing to use that large of a property for, and only one reason to advertise that it sleeps 32. My husband, foster sons, and I live right behind it. So this summer, while watching TV in my family room on a Friday evening, my house started shaking and the windows started vibrating so loudly that I couldn't hear the TV. This went on, and we're talking about big space. I mean, I can't even imagine. I would never have known that there could be that level of vibration being caused by noise. We live next to 7th Avenue, and we've never had that. This went on for most of the weekend. I first called the property manager about it, so the whole thing about knowing who the property manager is, it's not a solution. It's a great starting point, but it's not a solution. And I called the police. That wasn't a solution either, because guess what the police are doing on Saturdays a mile from Christown? They're fighting crime. We visited the property. We talked to their bouncer, the sound man, the party goers, to no avail. The police were called, but they were busy at wherever they were fighting crime. I'm glad that that's what they were doing. They shouldn't have to come to our neighborhood. Since then, there have been lots of other problems. Our area is zoned only for single-family residences, not resorts, boarding houses, or party venues. But 610 West Berridge is no longer a single-family residence in any meaningful sense. It's a business, it's a resort, but it's not a single-family residence, and that's what I bought. Now, we could move. I could make a whole bunch of money off of selling my house and my property. I think that's what's going to start happening in our area. People are going to see that the Airbnb people and others, out-of-state investors, can make a ton of money by having these party houses. I talked to my foster son last night. He's 21 now. I asked him about party houses. He says, oh, they're on the social media all the time, all over Phoenix, but the best ones are the mansion parties. Those are the ones, and how do you find out about them? Oh, kids just put it on Snapchat, and they just race to wherever it is that they're having the best party. And when they hear that they have a plan ahead of time what to do if the police get called, they could have an alternate forum. And there's a business in place for sponsoring these parties. There's a full business on it, and all the kids know what they are. I looked on the Maricopa County Attorney's website. they've identified the biggest problem in juvenile enforcement as being party crews. Party crews where gangs get involved in taking the revenue at the door. I asked my foster son, well, are you going to go there to these things anymore? He says, no, I'm old enough now to go to clubs or whatever. He said, but it's all the underage kids. And he said, the problem is that people bring in guns, and it gets really scary. And, you know, I'm just thinking about the night after Halloween, what happened at one of these mansion parties in California. This ordinance the proposed ordinance went a long way toward curbing that problem by defining what a family was in the same way that it defined it when I moved into my property. And now it's been stricken. They took out the very thing that was the teeth, because there's no teeth in requiring the property owner to respond in 60 minutes, because on Friday and Saturday night, the police are busy doing other things. They have to arm up to go to these parties. They can't just go with one squad car. My husband and I, when the police didn't come, went over ourselves. I figured that I'm so old now, maybe I took pictures. All the license plates, I talked to the people, they were all from Phoenix. They weren't from out of state. They weren't some family. They didn't even know that there was a problem with being in a residentially zoned place. So, coming to this meeting, I was pleased that the ordinance as proposed was a start. And it was only, I mean, the whole thing about registration, that's great, but I had that information. It doesn't do any good. It complies with the state statute, but it doesn't comply. It's not enough to comply with your duty as our city council to protect us. And what does comply with it and complies with all of the property rights that I bought into and that everybody else in my area bought into is to require that everybody using these houses is some sort of family under the definition that everybody else has to comply with. This place built out was a 3-bedroom home. It's now a 7-bedroom home because this Alaskan investor figured out they could make more money off of
Please give us your final
assisted
thought.
living. And yeah, so I'll wind up. Off of assisted living, and then figured out that they made more money off of advertising it on Airbnb. The fine structures don't even put a dent in the bucket. We have to define what a family residence is. It's in our ordinance already. Don't take it out. Thanks.
Barbara is next, followed by Leonard Clark.
I have a question real quick, Mayor.
Councilman Nowakowski.
So did we change the part in the ordinance about residential that it should be just families, or like what she was saying is that you can have up to 32 people in a house in the middle of a residency? Is that changed in that new ordinance that we're putting together?
Mayor, Councilman Nowakowski, the existing definition of a family states that a family is an individual or 2 or more persons related by blood, marriage, or adoption living together as a single housekeeping unit, or a group of not more than 5 persons who need not be related living together as a single housekeeping unit in a dwelling unit. And so that definition of a family is what she is bringing to light as it relates to the potential for a short-term rental unit to have more than 5 unrelated people staying in it versus a more traditional use of single family per the definition, which would be not more than 5 unrelated persons, but you can have any number of people as part of a family. The city does not define what a family is in terms of you want to have a parent living with you that's helping you with your kids. You have a 20-something who's failed to launch from the house and they live with you. That's still a family, and that has a number of people that would go with it that aren't your average 2.6 persons per household kind of thing. And so what staff is proposing with the memo is take the provisions that talked about requiring a use permit to have more than a family there to remove that so that we can do some additional work in studying how we could address this potential issue. Because it is something that is difficult to enforce from the standpoint of when you are going to someone's house, whether it's the police or neighborhood services department as part of zoning enforcement, if someone says they're a family, we won't challenge that. There's nothing that we can do with that. And so the concern is that you would have neighborhood expectations that we would be going in to shut down a house because neighbors counted more than 5 people going in there. But the reality is that there's families, that would be a part of that, and so it becomes very difficult to enforce. And so what we're trying to do is spend a little more time to work with some industry folks, see what happens to the state legislature, as well as work with the law department to see is there a better way to address this issue.
Because some of the issues that we have out in the Levine area is that you have 200 individuals in a house that's only built for a small family of about 3 or 4 people. So I know that when you walk into a restaurant or a facility, there's always 100 and something people allowed in this facility or 85 people allowed in this facility. So if you have a single family home with over 200 people and they're having a party, I mean, there should be some type of way that we can enforce that, right? I think that's the concern I'm hearing from the community. That's why I brought it to attention back about 6 months ago, and I don't think it's addressing those issues that those individuals in our historic neighborhoods and in the Levine area are concerned about.
Mayor and Councilman Nowakowski, the language that is in section 10-195 that talks about prohibited uses is what would address that type of scenario where you have 200 people at a house for a party where it's more operating like a event center, banquet hall, restaurant as you described in your situation. That's where that language would address that particular issue, where right now we have people on these platforms that are advertising homes as banquet hall facilities, saying great to rent those in that manner, and saying that the protection that the state put in place for short-term rentals applies to them. This makes it clear that it does not apply to them, and so that's what we would enforce in that particular circumstance.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, and thank you to Mayor and Council for giving me the opportunity to speak. I am a resident of the neighborhood that has just been referenced by Ms. Grimwood. I've lived there 41 years, and the change in the last 2 years is pretty devastating. I'm obviously committed. I chair the Block Watch, and there are 2 areas I'd like to discuss briefly. One is, thank you, first of all, for what you're doing so far. I know you're working under the impress of the state legislation, and I'm really appreciative of what is happening here. But it needs teeth. The 32, somehow there has to be a limit to the number who can sleep there. 32 is just frankly unthinkable in any neighborhood anywhere in this city, particularly with an R110 designation that should be there should be no commercial enterprise. Secondly, I'd like to see something that talks about the distance between these. We have this one, which is right near Ms. Grimwood's, but we have another one diagonally across the street that suddenly popped up. So I know there is a distance requirement for group homes. They can only be 1,300 feet apart or whatever. I would like to see that kind of thing addressed. My other point, my other category is we've heard references over and over again today of references to the industry, talking to the industry. We need to talk to the residents. In addition to the situation that Ms. Grimwood endured, about 3 weeks ago, a family who thought they were going to sit Shiva at the party house didn't have the address correct and walked right into another house several houses north who happened to have their door unlocked because of their kids and just walked right in. Now, they have a dog who bites. this family happens to have a gun. This could have been a fatality caused by, again, we don't need to mix commercial enterprises with residential properties. And if we do, we have to have more protection for the neighbors. We happen to have had to hire private security.
Thank you for your testimony.
Sorry. Thank you. Can I ask one more question? Be included is whether or not our private security could enforce some of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Leonard Clark is followed by Mark Bouvet. Mark will be followed by Carmen Rutan. So
hello,
Carmen,
Mayor
Carmen
and Council. My name is Mark Bouvet, and I have been a resident of Phoenix since 1980. I'm pleased to address the Council today on short-term rentals as a strong advocate for them. I have been a consumer of short-term rentals since 2002 and a responsible owner and participant in this market since 2016 in the city of Phoenix. The short-term rental properties, the two that I am a part of, are both in the city of Phoenix. We are responsible neighbors. We get to know our neighbors. We communicate with them. They know who we are. I'm also involved in the state ad hoc legislation that's proposed in the effort to study and comment on that, and I'm pleased to see the revisions in the proposed ordinance, and I would urge the council and the staff to take their time with this and not needlessly burden this economy, this vital tourist producing and economically vibrant piece of the Arizona economy. I would urge you to take time and deliberation to carefully consider what you do with these ordinances so as not to needlessly or punitively restrict the owners of these properties. Contrary to popular belief, and I know that there are horror stories and I know that things have happened out there, but a short-term rental does not necessarily mean that a frat house is next door to you or that every one of them is a party house. Our clients are families, family groups that are here for all kinds of good reasons, and I believe that the dominant majority of these are operated responsibly, can operate within the guidelines, and I would urge you to take time in your deliberations on this matter. Thank you very much.
Charles St. Angelo, followed by Stephanie Kaufman.
My name is Charles Santangelo. Thank you again for taking a look at this issue. I am in support of the ordinance. I think I have a unique perspective. I do own a vacation rental in the city of Phoenix. I've had it for about 3.5 years. I have strict rules as far as the description on the websites, as far as the number of occupants, no parties allowed, no loud noise, don't disturb the neighbors. I've given my neighbors all of my neighbors my phone number. I've never had any issues. This can be done responsibly. I don't feel this ordinance would interfere with that at all. So I think it's a good idea. When I moved from that house and started as a vacation rental, I moved into what I considered my dream house. 6 months later, an owner moved into the neighboring house and started to do vacation rentals in that house. So I live next to the party house. It's her primary residence, but she does rent it out for large events. We've had weddings, we've had DJ parties. We've had an Arizona Cardinal rented out for a party. It's been an absolute nightmare. So I feel like the ordinance wouldn't interfere with responsible vacation rental owners. I do have a few concerns. Somebody mentioned the occupancy issue. My neighbor sort of plays dumb when the police do show up. I've called the police dozens and dozens and dozens of times. They do try and help, but I feel bad calling them, but there's really no other option. But anyway, the owner plays dumb and says she rented out the house to 6 people, just a 3-bedroom house, and that she's not responsible if they have a party on their own. I feel like the occupancy is an issue in that case. My other concern is that it seems like, if I understand correctly, Neighborhood Services oversees this. Neighborhood Services is not available on Friday night, Saturdays, and Sundays when these large events happen. It sounds like the police will be involved in this now, which is great, but prior to this, according to Neighborhood Services, they had to see these infractions or problems in person. And they could not go on what the police were telling them, a fellow city department. So it sounds like that might not be the case. I just want to make sure that that is indeed, included in the ordinance.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Stephanie will be followed by Sarah Carlblum.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Stephanie Kaufman, and I've been a resident of Phoenix for 26 years and also a vacation rental owner since 2016. I should say a responsible vacation rental owner. I support this ordinance in principle, but I don't support all of the facets of it. And one that may seem trivial is actually one that I want to bring to your attention. It is regarding section 10-193D, the definition of short-term rental you have as 31 days, does not include 31 days or longer. I would like to see that changed to 30 days or longer, not 31, for 3 reasons. One, most people who rent longer term, which is what I tend to do, my folks usually rent 30, 60, 90 days. They rent in 30-day increments. So having it be 30 versus 31 makes a big difference in my world, in my business, and most of the people that I know as well. Number 2, I'm also a real estate agent, and most of my clients have the same experience with their rentals. The Arizona Department of Revenue also defines that as 30 days, not 31. So to be consistent with the state as well, I would suggest that change. And then most HOAs who do have CC&R requirements regarding days are also have requirement that you must rent 30 or more days. So I know that one day might sound trivial, but it does make a big difference to many, many people who have this business. And I also want to say that I echo Mr. Bouvet's comments, who was 2 speakers ago, and appreciate all of his ideas and urge you to consider this carefully because it does affect a lot of people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sarah will be followed by Tracy Spencer.
Hi, my name is Sarah Carlblum, and I want to thank you for addressing this issue. I am a responsible Airbnb, owner-occupied Airbnb host in Central Phoenix. And for our family, it's been a huge blessing to be able to use a guest house that we already own on our property to generate some extra income. And it's been a sweet gift for me being able to host people from out of state to see them putting their money back into Central Phoenix. My husband and I have lived in Central Phoenix since 2001, and since that time, Central Phoenix has changed a lot for the better. When we first moved here in 2001, the downtown areas were very dead, and so I'm super pleased about what's happening. But I think bringing vacation dollars from people out of state into our Central Phoenix neighborhoods and businesses is really important, rather than all of those people coming from out of state, which we have a lot of here, especially in the wintertime, going to the big hotel chains that are resorts on the periphery of the Phoenix metro area, and then their dollars being spent out there. we've also had the opportunity to host people that are moving here. And so when they stay in a local community and experience a local neighborhood, they're more likely to want to move into the Central Phoenix area or a local community. So I'm sad about the party houses that are popping up everywhere. That is not what we do. We vet our guests very carefully, and we have very strict restrictions about what is and is not allowed. I want to be a good community member because I live in the neighborhood in which I host. So I think I'm glad that this conversation is happening.
Thank you.
I am in support of ordinances that help Airbnb and other short-term rental platforms to be viable for the long term. So I hope that this can continue, this dialogue can continue, and we can make everybody happy so that people that are living in communities.
Tracy Spencer is followed by Richard Freshley.
Hi, Mayor, Councilman. I appreciate this opportunity to address you. I, too, am a responsible vacation rental owner. I have been doing vacation rentals both in California and Phoenix for 20 years and have never once had an issue with the neighbors. This really boils down to good owners and bad owners, and good guests and bad guests. And while I appreciate that with this ordinance you're trying to solve the bad guest, bad owner problem, I don't think you've done it. If I'm renting a party house that sleeps 32, a $500 fine or a $1,500 fine isn't material. But the context of what you are asking the good vacation rental owners to do is to turn away 3 couples who aren't married, who might want to come and have a vacation in Phoenix, or to turn away 6 people who are coming to work a golf tournament and need a place to stay, or to turn away 6 people who are coming to go to a trade show who aren't related. The definition of family as 5 or less unrelated doesn't work for this industry if you have a house that sleeps 8 people, parking for 8 people, a way to host those many people without disturbing the neighbors. What you really need is to figure out how to get some teeth and some enforcement so that the party houses go away. But the things that you've got in this ordinance are not going to fix the problem, in my opinion. All they're going to do is make it more difficult for those of us who are already committed to being good citizens and good neighbors.
And before we hear from Richard, Councilwoman Pastor has a question.
Ellen, can you address those comments in the sense of the 6? Because my understanding is that the definition of family is 5, and then after that, then they have to register, place their information or register. So could you please address that? I don't think that turns away 6 or 8 or 10.
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, the language that came out in the memo this afternoon changes well, let me start off. It does not change anything relative to registration. So everyone has to register if you are doing a short-term rental, which is a stay less than 30 days or less. That's existing ordinance language. That's how the city has defined what is a short-term rental a la hotel before Airbnbs and short-term rentals existed versus a regular, 1-year rental of a single-family home. And that doesn't change at all. This proposed ordinance requires everyone to register who is doing the short-term rental. The language that came out this afternoon does strike the provision that requires a use permit if there are people who are 5 or more unrelated people staying at a home. And that's so staff can work on that language to see if there's a better way to address that issue that you've heard from the neighbors but at the same time recognizing that in some instances there are ways to do that, as some of the short-term operators have pointed out as well. And so in terms of her issues and concerns, the proposal before you does not include that use permit language in it.
Thank you.
Richard Freshley? Thank you. Go ahead and close the public hearing and turn to council members for comments and a motion.
Okay. Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion, but I do want to commit myself to working with the neighborhoods and with the industry. Clearly, we have to wait and see what happens at the legislature, and we need to be a part of that discussion. And I took some notes on some suggestions we can make to the ad hoc committee, but I am prepared to make a motion. Okay. I would like to adopt the ordinance pertaining to short-term vacation rental registry as amended in the memo written by Alan Stevenson today, January 8th, 2020. Is that good enough, Alan or Chris?
Mayor and Councilwoman Stark, yes, because you did reference adopt the ordinance pursuant to this
and
memo.
And the adopt,
so,
yeah. See, now I forgot
from
it.
today, yep, you got it.
I usually remember. Thank you.
You got it.
It's a team effort, right?
Oh.
Second.
Mayor?
And Councilwoman, any additional comments?
No.
Councilman
Oh,
DeCease.
Mayor?
Second.
Oh, sorry.
Second.
If they could also add in there as maybe as a friendly motion or whatever else. I mean, the one person did bring up a really good point. If you could add multiple individuals on the list rather than just one person, I think it's better for us too than to keep trying to reach somebody. But if you have 2 or 3 other individuals on there, we'd be better off as a city if they would be willing to add that in there too, that we add multiple individuals.
And I think we have broad consensus that that makes sense. Does that need to be in the motion?
That would be part of a form, right?
Yeah, Mayor, members of council, it doesn't need to be in there because it is,
Okay.
We will set up the registry to allow it, but it's not a requirement. So if someone just wants to do it themselves, we're not saying they have to have multiple people. It's an option, so we would allow it as part of the registry.
Okay, I'd be fine with this then.
Thank you. Councilwoman Pastor.
I have 2 questions. One is 10193 under D. Someone mentioned 30, 60, 90 days. Why 31 days?
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, the days that are referenced in that particular provision are based upon existing ordinance definition that has it's the way the city has determined the difference between a hotel, lease type of use versus a long-term residential use. And so it stays less than 30 days are defined as a short-term stay. And so prior to the state law change in 2017, those types of stays were not permitted in residential zoning districts. You had to go in a commercial district, a la a hotel, motel, that type of district. And so that's where that number comes from. We're not changing it. We didn't invent it today as part of this. It's been around. We're just making it clear that it's 30 days or less. You've got to comply with the short-term rental stuff. If you have a lease that is 31, 90 days, 2 years you're renting the house, that doesn't comply with the short-term rental. There are other rental registration requirements and things that those types of rentals have to apply and comply with.
Okay. And then the second question was, can private security enforce this?
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, at the end of the day, I think the city is the ultimate one who would enforce that. I would defer to Mr. Meyer if a private entity could do that, but I don't believe so.
So what I'm envisioning, Mr. Meyer, is that what happens in the historic districts is they hire private security in the neighborhood. And so you see private security moving throughout the neighborhood, and it's for safety reasons. And so if that private security, I guess, encounters a short-term rental, I guess the question is, can private security enforce these, this ordinance? Which I think I know the answer, but.
Mayor, members of the council, I would have to look at that, and to some extent it might depend on the agreement that's in place with the homeowners, but generally I would say no. I think Mr. Stevens is correct that dealing with a property owner and the use of the property would be outside of the scope of private security companies' responsibility and authority.
Vice Mayor.
I first of all want to thank all the neighbors, everyone that came out in support for this item. It's something that my office has been working diligently since the first day we came into office. We had plenty of conversations, and for me, for my office, safety is incredibly important. I understand what this is like. This is something that we've been working diligently on for a very long time. But today's ordinance is the result of many conversations, of a lot of work that city staff has been doing. And I just want to thank Helen Grimwood, Ann Ender, Jeff Spellman, and Mary Crozier, who have stepped up to ensure the safety of our neighborhoods. This ordinance is a step in the right direction to making sure we put safety of our residents first. But I also want to address some of the things that some of the folks that spoke. We're definitely going to continue to have meetings around the permits and what we're going to do around that. Definitely looking forward to working with all different of my colleagues to figure out how do we keep ensuring, how do we make sure that our neighborhoods continue to be safe and that we respect the privacy and the safety of everyone that lives in the city of Phoenix. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Nowakowski.
Mayor, I think what Councilmember Pastor said is the private security, that's a great idea. I know that there's a lot of homeowner associations that are starting to share security companies in their areas, homeowners associations especially. So maybe that's something we should look into the future, seeing that I know that we heard that story of that police officers are busy going after individuals that are breaking into homes and stuff. And then when you call, this is probably one of the low priority calls. So maybe there might be thinking outside of the box using those private security somehow, some way. So I think we should look into it in the future. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. Councilwoman Pastor.
Yeah, I really appreciate everyone's comments, especially from those I don't even know the term, good property owners, renters. I don't even know what to say, because I do know that the effects of some of the short-term rentals in specifically District 4 has really risen to the top. There have been shootings. There have been prostitution happening. There has been men urinating as they play beer pong out in a family neighborhood. So we do have our bad, renters, and then those that end up renting the home. I think this is the first step as we move forward. There's been many conversations. Thank you, Councilwoman Stark, for taking the lead and really working on this, but also with the legislature and organizing communities. I have to say that it's been interesting because where I live, my neighbors are very active, and they've been very active in the sense of being at the legislature and doing testimony. So I understand the dynamics also, but I also understand free enterprise and wanting to be able to make our economy move forward. There's a balance in all of this, and in the balance of it is how do we all coexist and still be able to have a quality life. So I appreciate everybody's comments. I'm glad we're going to end up following state law and do what we have to do to be in the requirement of the state law. So that's how I look at it. So thank you.
Thank you. Any additional council member comments? Councilmember Williams.
Ellen, one of the things I have heard from the party homes in my district is the parking. They fill the street on both sides. Is there anything in there that addresses that? Or is there anything we can do as we amend this going forward?
Mayor, Councilwoman Williams, the challenge at the state level with the way the preemption language is worded is it says you have to treat them the same as you do you and I doing the normal single-family use of our homes. And so we couldn't adopt any special regulations that would say if you're a short-term rental home, you have to provide more parking requirements than would be what we require you and I. And since we generally are permissive in allowing for a normal use of our homes is, hey, once in a while we have a Super Bowl party or we have a quinceañera or we have something like that happens where we have friends over and they park in the street, it's public right-of-way. And so we wouldn't be able to do anything different in that regard unless we wanted to apply a standard that would apply to everyone regardless of if it was a short-term rental or not.
One of the things we have done with some neighborhoods is when they have had parking problems, is it possible the people on the street could all ask for no parking?
Mayor, Councilwoman Williams, yes, the Street Transportation Department does have a process that you have to go through that is fairly rigorous because it is public right-of-way that's owned by all of the public, not just the person in front of the property. And so there is a process to go through in which to request that. And anyone who's interested in that, we could get them in contact with the streets department and the person who oversees that effort.
Okay, thank you for the information. And thank you for all your work on this, as well as the council members.
Nice creative thinking there as well. Councilman Waring.
Alan, just a question. So on item 50 today about the sober living homes, we changed our rules basically to comply with state law, changing from what we had before because the state made it a uniform system for all cities, correct? I mean, that's a basic.
Mayor, Councilwoman Williams, that's correct. Or Councilman Waring, sorry.
It's close. We look a lot alike. But I guess I would say this. What are the chances, I mean, the legislature has, at least from what I've read in the paper, and there's been quite a bit of coverage of this, has expressed maybe a willingness to take up this issue in a way they haven't previously. One concern I would have if I was an owner-operator would be if I have a place in, because you referenced Scottsdale. So our rules aren't exactly like Scottsdale's, right? They're not identical.
Mayor, Councilman Waring, that is correct. They're similar but not exact.
And that's not a criticism of you. It's just a fact. It's just different. So now you have to know the Scottsdale rules if you have a place in Scottsdale and you have a place in Phoenix. What are the chances that the legislature comes up with one uniform system, which I think is better for a business-friendly state, but also, frankly, might provide some of the teeth that some members and some members of the public have talked about too? Because I'm not questioning that it's an issue. It's just there are ways to address it. Is that a possibility? I mean, I think the city is represented on the, I don't know, task force or whatever they're calling it. Is that something that they're talking about? Because that would seem to make the most sense. And we just did it in what I would argue is an analogous situation with the sober living homes, which were causing the same different parking. There was a lot of the same kind of issues. Yeah. Why wouldn't that be a logical outcome here too?
Mayor, Councilman Waring, that is something that certainly is in the purview of the state legislature to do that. In the briefings I have heard from our intergov, I don't know that that has been discussed, but it could be discussed. But I haven't been in all of those meetings, so I don't have the most up-to-date information.
And I recognize it's probably, Mayor, an unfair question for you to be answering. I just didn't know maybe you had some kind of sense of where this is headed. I think that would be a more ideal situation for the operators and potentially also citizens. I mean, I think on both sides, everybody knows what the rules are and what their rights are and so forth. But okay, well, thank you for the information. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Roll call.
DeCiccio?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Nowakowski?
Yes.
Pastor?
Yes.
Stark?
Yes.
Waring? Williams?
Yes.
Guardado?
Yes.
Gallego?
Yes. Passes 8-1. Thank you, and this is one we'll continue to work on. We next move to item 112, and it is an item in Council District 8, so we begin with a brief staff report. All right. We will open the public hearing. We have only one card from Thomas Galvin, I believe, representing the applicant. Knowing that there is only one card, would you like to testify?
Sure.
Okay.
Mayor Gallego, members of the council, first of all, Happy New Year. I'm Thomas Galvin with Rose Law Group on behalf of the applicant. Last month we appeared before you, so I don't think we need to do a presentation again, and I understand that staff may be doing a presentation if the council wants to hear it. But we want to single out and commend Councilman Garcia for his leadership. He brought up some good key questions a month ago, and since then we met with Councilman Garcia. We want to express thanks and gratitude for his insight and his thoughtful consideration. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, I will close the public hearing and turn to Councilmember Garcia for a motion.
Same, I want to thank you all for coming and having the conversation and doing what the community needs. So I want to motion to approve item 112 based on the November 7, 2019 Planning Commission approval and adopt the related ordinance.
Second.
Excellent. Roll call.
DeCiccio?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Nowakowski?
Yes.
Pastor?
Yes.
Stark? Waring? Williams?
Yes.
Guardado?
Yes.
Gallego?
Yes. Passes unanimously. Wonderful. Thank you and congratulations. That concludes our agendized business for today's council meeting. We next move to the public comment portion of our meeting, and we'll, in a moment, turn to our city attorney to introduce that. Just a reminder for this portion of our meeting, we have 3 minutes per person and no donation of time. City attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the citizen comment part of the agenda provides an opportunity for members of the public to address the City Council for up to 3 minutes on issues of interest or concern to them. The Arizona Open Meeting Law permits the City Council to listen to the comments from the public, but prohibits the members from discussing or taking action on matters presented during citizen comment.
Thank you. And we will begin with Leonard Clark, followed by Greta Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor and Council Member. Since I won't ever be elected, I'm going to try to squeeze this in a lot, very quickly. First, I just want to send out condolences, as I'm sure all of you probably are on the same page with we have a lot of citizens in Phoenix and Arizona from Puerto Rico and the horrible multiple tragedies they are undergoing with their earthquake now after the hurricane. Also, I would like to send out prayers and hopes to the 2-year-old child the Phoenix police responded to just a short while ago who was mauled apparently by a family dog. Also, I want to thank Council Lady Stark and the mayor and anybody else who supports what they did. I didn't know about it, or I would have been there, to basically be out there symbolically saying that you want to have red light cameras, but you want to do it in a fair way so that all the neighborhoods are represented, because I can understand the other side of it. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about, trying to figure this here, is this is something I'm proposing. First, I want to say thank you to all of my fellow soldiers and veterans and the ones who are serving in harm's way right now. I was thinking of the mayor today, Mayor Stanton, who just put out a statement on Twitter now that he's in Congress. This is like less than an hour ago, Earlier today, I received a classified intelligence briefing from top administration officials. It remains painfully clear that the administration lacks a coherent Middle East and West Asia policy, and there are still many unanswered questions. I am grateful that no Americans were harmed during last night's missile attack in Iraq, but it is naive to conclude that Iran is standing down. In the last week, the Iranian regime announced it will no longer abide by the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and has restarted its nuclear weapons program. That poses serious and near long-term risks to our national security and of our allies. So I agree with the mayor, but I also want to propose something, and I know it'd be radical. You would not ever do this. We have sister cities in the city of Phoenix, which is a great program. Chengdu, China, Taipei, Taiwan, that controversy, who's the real China? Why don't we propose, instead of all of this hate being sent out from you-know-who in the White House, who basically had a 5-time deferment from the draft, why don't we propose that one of the cities of Iran, why don't we have a sister city? We are the 5th largest city. We could send out a statement that, you know, we don't want a war. Nobody wants a war. You know, false flag, dog wag the tail war. So I'll finish with, I know none of you will do it. It's too controversial. There is a protest tomorrow, nonviolent, at 24th Street and Camelback in the city of Phoenix. It's apropos. I'm asking you to show up. It'll be in the afternoon because we don't want a war with Iran. And then finally, you know, you've been beaten up over the Uber vote, but the governor's on there and the legislature criticizing you. But they're the same people who told the city of Tucson and us that if a weapon, a gun is used to murder somebody, it can't be melted down. It must be sold back to the public. Thank you for what you do. I respect all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Greta next, followed by Luis Acosta.
Happy New Year to each and all of you, and I hope it is a provident year for the city of Phoenix and all its residents. I recently had brought to my attention a serious dead tree situation at Hance Park because the water was turned off there for 1 whole year. The only living plant I know of that can survive without water, which is plants' main resource of food for life, the only one that can survive without it for long periods of time is a cactus. These are deciduous trees. There's 61 dead in Hance Park. This is complete and utter negligence on the part of this city. Inexcusable and very, very costly. This is a capital asset that you let die because somebody gave an order to turn the water off because there was a leak in the ceiling of the tunnel, instead of having a meeting with the appropriate people in the State Highway Department and people in this city or people that you contract to talk to with the state about such a problem. Get it analyzed and get it fixed. You don't let trees go without water for 1 whole year. That's a many hundreds of thousands of dollars investment. Move the entrance, which is the officially designated entrance and was when the building was designed at 200 West Washington, where each one of you has an office, to the entrance near the corner of 3rd Ave in Washington. You don't ask guests to come to your home and bring them in the basement or the servant's entrance. You don't do that to guests to City Hall, citizens and other officials who come to meet. Third, I brought this up every year, and I've been coming down here now for over 25. Speak into your mics, take a deep breath, and project from your thorax, not from the Adam's apple through your nose. You're not sitting in your living room or your bedroom talking to a member of your family or having pillow talk with your boyfriend or your husband. Act professionally and speak up. Thank you.
Mr. Luis will be followed by Elizabeth Venable.
Hi, my name is Luis Acosta. I live near 28th Street and Baseline. Happy New Year, council members. For about a decade, I've been addressing issues on Baseline Road, basically between 16th Street and 32nd Street. Recently, I invited Councilman Garcia to do a drive-along with me. Now, why is it that for a decade, a private citizen has had to remind the city how to take care of trees, how to take care of plants, but more importantly, the waste of water? As many of you know, I was employed by the city for 16 years, and the amount of water waste in landscaping is horrible. The City of Phoenix reminds citizens to check their toilet tanks because they leak and how many gallons of water they waste. As we know, there's been some water issues in the city for over a decade, reminding us to conserve water. Recently, I had talked to one of the horticulturists who's responsible for the landscape. And he says, no, we don't do water audits because now we have a computer that monitors leaks. However, as many times as I've sent photos, I've probably sent more than 60 to 70 photos showing negligence in just a 2-mile stretch, how trees are neglected. All the plants that were planted in 2005 had disappeared. All the granite that was installed has disappeared with no money for maintenance. Mr. Garcia stepped out of the vehicle with me and I showed him one of the trees, only one of several trees where there is what they call the maximum minimum of job requirements. And what does that mean? You plant new trees and then there is no staking or proper staking because of the infrequency or it's not in their job description or not enough time given to straighten out trees. The city has planted probably more than 50 to 60 to 70 trees in the last year, probably because of my activism on this road. But what's the sense in planting them if 4 years from now you tear them down? I have sent dozens of photos, and I have some that have date stamps from 4 years ago if anybody would want to see them. My point is negligence, negligence, negligence. Everybody wants new projects. City employees on their performance guides are saying, think of a new project that you can do to enhance our city, to beautify it. So you put more bling bling on the street, but no funds to protect it and to maintain it. But water on Baseline is still being wasted where there used to be probably 100 plants or more that existed. These drip systems have never been plugged. Why? Because there's no money, there's no employees staffed to do audits on any of these sprinkler systems. Now, we're only talking 2 to 3 miles. What about the rest of the city? When I worked for the city for the 15 years and drove the entire 525 square miles, I saw it with frequency, and many times I would make notations in my notepad and report it after work because it was illegal to be proactive because it was not in your job description. Protect our water, protect our street, stop spending money on bling bling, take care of what you got.
Elizabeth will be followed by Emily Smith.
Hello, I'm here on behalf of some of my friends today. Okay, so I have a letter from me, the Fund for Empowerment. I'm not just the only one, but the Fund for Empowerment, the ACLU of Arizona, the Central Arizona Chapter of the National Lawyers Guild, the Arizona Poor People's Campaign, Poder in Action, Phoenix Food Not Bombs, and Mass Liberation Project Arizona. So I'd like to read you a little bit of it for my 2 minutes and 32 seconds. Dear Mayor Kate Gallego and City Council members, we are writing to urge the City of Phoenix City to change its policies and practices surrounding police interaction with people who are experiencing homelessness. We have learned of numerous reports of citations and arrests as well as disposal of personal property. Specifically, we ask that the city end the following practices. 1, the arrest and citation of people for being homeless, that is, sleeping, camping, sitting, and standing. And 2, the seizure and destruction of personal property of individuals who are experiencing homelessness. People experiencing homelessness must not be criminalized for the unavoidable consequences of being human, nor should they have their personal property taken from them and destroyed without proper notice and storage procedures and practices. We request that the Phoenix City Council change city policies and practices, review and edit the relevant city codes, and provide training to law enforcement and city employees in order to eliminate any unlawful actions by the city and its employees. The letter further addresses Martin, and then also Levon v. City of LA with specific things. But what I wanted to say was I was a little bit disturbed because I got a call from, I think he's the commander from around the Cass area. He told me, why do I listen to them? As though they're all collectively hallucinating, that their stuff is being taken in front of their faces. Now, I know that I was very excited when you made your policy, but he had never heard of your policy on friends can watch their friends' stuff. In the trash, still. So I appreciate it when you make new policies, but I hope that it will trickle down to the law enforcement who actually have to negotiate what these offenses are and how to negotiate, how to structure power. So, and they have most of the responsibility for these interactions. But if they are not given explicit directions, they will be telling other people not to touch stuff while they're watching their friend's stuff, and then they will watch it go into the big truck and get thrown away where they will never see it again. So I would encourage you to read the letter. I would encourage you to follow up. I would encourage you to consider every single organization that is signed on to this letter. Everyone cares just as much as I do. Not everyone can come. So.
Thank you. Is Emily Smith still here? Is Rachel Montoya still here? All right, that concludes today's City Council meeting. Happy New Year.